What's happening? Let's talk about microaggressions against mental illnesses today. So what are microaggressions? According to this article that I found, it's verbal and non-verbal environmental slights, snubs, or insult. They could be intentional or unintentional that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative messages to people based solely upon their marginalized group membership. But what makes this different than your average household type of discrimination is that even people with the best of intentions can unconsciously deliver them and not be aware of the fact that they're being microaggressive. They don't really know what the potential effects are of the things that they do or say. So within microaggressions, there are different types of attacks. So you have micro-assaults, which are explicit attacks that are more like traditional racism. You have micro-insults, which are just demeaning and insulting remarks but aren't really direct. Then there are micro-invalidations, which are actions which negate an individual's personal experience or reality. A lot of non-Caucasian races experience microaggressions in their everyday life, but let's not forget the people undergoing these kinds of attacks because of their gender, sexual orientation, their ability status. These are all socially marginalized groups. But what does that exactly mean? Socially marginalized groups, confined to existing on the margins of our social, cultural, political, and economical systems, resulting in exclusion from the mainstream of life in our society, unequal treatment, and social injustice. Wow, that's a mouthful. That's what she said. So if you look at this explanation, you can easily conclude that people with a mental disease are a socially marginalized group in themselves. There are a lot of different ways that people with a mental disease can experience microaggressions. Just a couple of examples are the fact that they'll be treated differently by their family and friends after they've been in a mental hospital, or the belief that they're being avoided by others, and sometimes they're seen as less competent by people who don't really know them at all. Sometimes they're seen as less competent by people who found out that they're using a mental health service. It shouldn't come as a surprise that this kind of social rejection is associated with less self-esteem, empowerment, and a sense of coherence. What happens with these people who are stigmatized is that they end up internalizing this stigmatization, which will actually end up worsening the psychiatric symptoms and will give them less self-esteem and empowerment and ultimately less hope. And what makes people with a mental illness so unique as a socially marginalized group is that generally people can't really see it. So this gives patients the choice to tell if, and if so when, that they have a mental disease. And well, that has an effect on when and how those microaggressions that they, eventually get, how they will occur. So I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios. Minimization, the fact that they're going to make your problem smaller than it actually is to make you feel like you're exaggerating. How can you be depressed? I mean, you're always smiling. Symptomizing. Every little thing that you do immediately gets put into this whole context of it must be a part of your mental disease. You know what? I'm not going to go along with your plan. I mean, you don't really know what you want in life. You're just being all borderline and impulsive again. Patronization. They'll compliment you on something and it seems like a nice thing, but if you weren't in one of those marginalized groups, if you weren't, diagnosed with a mental disease, they wouldn't even bother making a point about it. You won an award? Oh my God, I'm so proud of you. So were the other competitors also? They'll often assume that you have a lower intelligence. So yeah, I mentioned it before. I wanted to have, red. They'll just assume that you're incompetent altogether. But didn't you say he was schizophrenic? So how does he have a job? They'll often think you're not in control of yourself. Are you sure you could do it? Maybe I could ask someone else to. It's just, you really need to know what you want in this situation. You can't let anyone change your mind. Are you sure you're up to that? They'll assume that you're dangerous or unpredictable. I don't know if I want to hang around my kids. I mean, she used medication, I've heard, and even had to be taken to a mental hospital once. The fear of contamination. Okay, innocent until proven guilty. Except for that guy, because he had some kind of mental thing. Maybe you should ask him first. And just the shaming of mental illnesses. I don't know, I mean, it does kind of sound like a depression, but if you go to the doctor and they diagnose it, they'll put it in a status and then everyone can read it from now on. You don't want that, do you? Doctors aren't always helping either. They'll treat you like a second-class citizen sometimes. There's no need to ask these patients about side effects or anything. They don't know what they're feeling and they're not a very reliable source of information anyway. And just over-discrimination. Oh, the applicant was fine, but I don't think we should call him back. He mentioned that his aunt has schizophrenia, and I'm not sure if that's hereditary or not. This will have outcomes on patients with mental illness in itself. I mean, most of them see themselves as inherently broken, and people keep telling them that it's their fault and they're just, exaggerating and they're trying so hard, but, in the end, they'll start feeling like it is their fault. Anyway, I hope this video kind of helped you out and make you realize that sometimes you do feel kind of insulted about something and you can't really put your finger on it. That might be microaggression.